when I walked into the room. I'm looking around thinking, which one is Ray Romano? And I saw him and I thought,
Patricia Heaton, renowned for playing Deborah Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond, finally opened up the hidden pain and personal struggles she faced behind the scenes. After remaining silent for years, her revelation has finally revealed a side of the show no one knew about. Join us as we unravel the details of what really happened on Everyone Loves Raymond set. By the time Everybody Loves Raymond hit its third season, fans began to notice something different about Patricia Heaton. It wasn't her acting. She was as sharp and hilarious as ever. It was her appearance. Expressions once natural now seemed just a bit more frozen, but nothing was ever confirmed. Patricia Heaton was hiding a personal battle, one that millions of women face, but few talk about on camera. While her character Deborah Barone managed chaotic kids, a lazy husband, and judgmental in-laws, Heaton was juggling something even more intense: the pressure to stay youthful in an industry obsessed with appearances. Unlike her male co-stars, Heaton didn't have the luxury of aging gracefully on screen. The role demanded she remain relatable to audiences, but Hollywood's version of relatable didn't include wrinkles, tired eyes, or signs of exhaustion. She was expected to look like the ideal sitcom wife, fresh-faced, and always camera-ready. It wasn't just viewers putting that pressure on her. Studio executives reportedly made it clear that leading ladies needed to maintain a certain look. The wardrobe could only hide so much. The rest was up to her. So, in between filming, promotional events, and award shows, Heaton began seeking cosmetic treatments. Insiders say she scheduled procedures between seasons so the changes would appear gradual. And if fans noticed, they chalked it up to healthy living or good genes. The real story stayed hidden. But it wasn't just about appearances. This was emotional survival. Heaton has since opened up about her experiences with cosmetic surgery, admitting she felt judged for wanting to look her best. But during Raymond, silence was her only option. So she played it safe. Quiet touch-ups here and there. Nothing dramatic, just enough to erase the signs of stress, the toll of motherhood, and the grind of working long hours under bright lights. And the grind was real. Between filming rehearsals, live tapings, and press tours, Heaton barely had time to rest. The stress of balancing her home life with a demanding production schedule showed in her face, and the solution was to hide it. Behind every laugh track was a woman working twice as hard to maintain an image that didn't reflect reality. And for Heaton, that reality included real exhaustion, insecurity, and doubt. Years later, she admitted to undergoing procedures like Botox and tummy tucks. But back then, such things were whispered about, not openly discussed. The stigma was strong, especially for actresses who built their brand on relatability. Patricia Heaton wasn't just portraying a mom, she was seen as the mom of late 90s television. But behind that polished image was a constant fear of judgment, not just from the public, but from peers, critics, and even fellow actors. Heaton knew it. Staying on top meant making sacrifices and not talking about them. So she made her choices privately, even as the world watched her every move. Ironically, it wasn't until after Everybody Loves Raymond ended that Heaton began speaking openly about cosmetic work. By then, she had grown more comfortable in her skin and didn't feel the need to hide it. But during the height of her fame, the fear of being labeled vain or insecure kept her lips sealed. The pressure to look perfect didn't just affect her body, it wore on her confidence too. And there was one more twist. Insiders later revealed that Heaton's decision to undergo these treatments wasn't entirely her own. Still, Heaton never cracked. She kept the image alive, and audiences never saw the stress behind the smile. But while the world watched Deborah Barone handle chaos with grace, Patricia Heaton was handling something else, quietly erasing the signs of the toll it took just to stay in the spotlight. And as the cameras rolled, she kept up the performance of a lifetime. But what came next showed just how far she'd go to protect her privacy, even when life got even more complicated. When viewers tuned into Everybody Loves Raymond each week, they saw the same smart, no-nonsense mom handling life's chaos. But what they didn't see, what CBS worked hard to make sure they never saw, was that Patricia Heaton was pregnant. Not once, but twice. During the height of the show's success, Heaton was quietly expecting, and the network pulled off a near-flawless illusion to hide it. The decision not to write her pregnancies into the show wasn't just creative, it was strategic. Everybody Loves Raymond had found its formula: 3 kids, 1 overworked mom, and 1 clueless husband. That formula was working. Ratings were climbing. The last thing CBS wanted was to shake up the dynamic. A 4th child for Ray and Deborah would have changed everything. It meant new scripts, new characters, new sets, and most importantly, a new tone. From that point on, almost every scene with Heaton was blocked to hide her midsection. What made the concealment even more remarkable was the timing. These weren't quick pregnancies. They stretched over long stretches of production, during which Heaton was expected to deliver lines, perform physical comedy, and maintain her quick timing, all while battling the physical toll of carrying a child. Morning sickness didn't care about studio schedules. Back pain didn't wait for the lunch break. But Heaton never missed a beat. She showed up, hit her marks, and stayed silent. That silence wasn't easy. While most women have the option to share their joy, their fatigue, or just take a breath, Heaton was living 2 lives. On set, she was the reliable Deborah. At home, she was a mom again, juggling a growing family of her own, and she wasn't exactly new to parenting either. By the time Everybody Loves Raymond had entered its later seasons, she was raising multiple kids under the age of 10. Imagine showing up to work while pregnant with baby number 4, putting in 12-hour days, hiding your symptoms from coworkers, and still delivering Emmy-winning performances. That was Heaton's reality. Her strength wasn't just in her comedic timing, it was in her grit. According to crew members, she barely complained. She powered through fatigue and hormonal roller coasters with barely a hint that anything was different. There's also the weight of Hollywood expectations. Heaton knew the rules. Leading actresses weren't supposed to let motherhood interfere with their marketability. Pregnancy, for all its beauty, was seen as a liability on set. Networks feared delays, rewrites, and image shifts. So Heaton did what many actresses in her position feel pressured to do. She smiled and made it look effortless. And it raises a tough question. How much do women in entertainment have to hide just to be taken seriously? Heaton's commitment to keeping her personal life out of the spotlight was applauded by some, but it also meant suppressing one of the most human experiences of her life. She gave everything to that role, including her own milestones. And when fans rewatch those episodes now, knowing the truth, it adds a new layer to every scene. What Heaton pulled off wasn't just professional, it was exceptional. She turned in some of her best performances while living through one of the hardest physical challenges of her life, and no one ever knew. But her silence didn't mean weakness. It meant control. And as you'll see in what came next, Patricia Heaton wasn't just managing a role, she was managing an entire image, and keeping it intact came with its own invisible price. During her 9-year run as the sharp, exhausted, but always hilarious Deborah Barone, she was the perfect sitcom mom, sarcastic, overworked, and somehow always holding the family together. But while the audience laughed at her on-screen struggles, very few knew that Heaton was fighting a real battle behind the scenes. Long before she ever stepped onto the Everybody Loves Raymond set, Heaton suffered from migraines, not the occasional headache, the kind that takes over your vision and makes it hard to speak. These migraines didn't care about rehearsal times, live tapings, or studio schedules. And when they hit hard. But migraines weren't her only hidden battle. For years, Heaton also dealt with ongoing digestive issues. It was the kind of chronic condition that flares without warning and makes even the simplest daily task unpredictable. Cast members say she never once used her health as an excuse. The truth is, Heaton was doing something most people don't realize actresses are expected to do. On a show, especially in the 90s, the expectations for women were double, sometimes triple. She wasn't just required to be funny, competent, or quick on her feet. She had to look good doing it and handle the pressure of being the only woman in a cast dominated by men. And she had to do it all while her body was quietly falling apart. Years later, Heaton revealed that one of the major turning points came when she decided to quit drinking entirely. Her energy dipped lower. She started to feel foggy. It wasn't dramatic, but it was steady. And she didn't like how it felt. The choice to go sober was deeply personal, but it also marked a shift in how she approached everything. She started getting serious about clean eating, controlling her schedule, and putting her health first. even while still giving CBS the performance they expected. It's easy to forget that sitcoms are shot in grueling conditions, long hours and pressure to be more emotionally resonant. And Heaton didn't have the luxury of showing weakness. Producers weren't sympathetic to health complications. If word got out that the show's female lead was battling constant pain, it could raise questions about her future on the series. It could lead to contract issues, reduced screen time, or even replacement. So Heaton did what she had to do. She kept it private. Every day she kept maintaining her strength and hiding the signs of struggle. And somehow, she pulled it off. Looking back, fans still praise her timing and her expressions. But behind that Emmy-winning performance was a woman pushing her body to the edge. And while the pain she carried was hidden from audiences, what came next would bring her even closer to the breaking point. Not physically, but emotionally. And this time, the pressure would come from people standing just a few feet away. On screen, the cast of Everybody Loves Raymond looked like one big dysfunctional but lovable family. But off-screen, things were more complicated, especially when it came to Patricia Heaton. Heaton was never one to stay quiet about her beliefs. While most of her co-stars avoided political conversation, especially on set, she didn't. Heaton was an outspoken conservative and a devout Christian. At first, it wasn't a major issue. She kept her views mostly separate from her work. But as the show gained success and her profile grew, so did the attention on her opinions. And eventually, it started affecting relationships on set. One of the most noticeable divides came between Heaton and Peter Boyle, who played her on-screen father-in-law, Frank Barone. Boyle, known for his sharp wit and politically liberal views, didn't always agree with Heaton's outspoken nature. According to insiders, while they managed to keep things respectful during work hours, there were plenty of heated debates off-camera. There were days when the energy between scenes felt colder. Conversations between cast members grew shorter. And while nothing ever exploded publicly, there was a noticeable shift in the dynamic, especially in later seasons. Despite all of this, her professionalism never wavered. She showed up on time, knew her lines, delivered flawless performances. As the final seasons wrapped, it became clear that the cast wasn't as close as they once had been. Some chalked it up to fatigue after nearly a decade together. Others knew better. The unspoken divide had slowly reshaped the atmosphere. While other stars took the easy road, Heaton stood her ground. But standing alone in Hollywood is never easy, even when you're at the top of your game. And just when it seemed like things were settling down, a completely new controversy would emerge. One that wouldn't come from the media or her castmates, but from someone even closer. Her personal life was about to collide with her public image in a way that no one could imagine. And when it hit, it would land in headlines with no warning. Patricia Heaton had spent years carefully cultivating her image. She was the grounded star, the responsible mom, the actress who kept things clean while others chased chaos. Her fans admired her discipline, but in 2009, that pristine reputation cracked, and not from a co-star clash. It came from the person closest to her daily life, her personal assistant. Jennifer Lee wasn't just any assistant. She had worked alongside Heaton for years. Reportedly trusted with everything for years, Heaton had spoken openly about fairness, respect, and faith. She had publicly supported pro-worker causes, donated to family charities, and made appearances at values-based fundraisers. The lawsuit made those public stances feel hollow to some. In interviews, Heaton emphasized how important it was to treat people with dignity, especially those in support roles. But here was someone from inside her own circle saying the opposite had happened. Jennifer Lee didn't vanish after filing the suit. She gave brief comments to reporters, stating that she wanted to be compensated fairly for the work she did. While the case itself faded from the headlines within months, the impact on Heaton's image lasted longer. Some cast members from Everybody Loves Raymond were caught completely off guard. A few privately expressed disbelief. Others avoided comments entirely. For an actress whose career had been built on the idea that she was different and more grounded, the whispers that followed would set the stage for something even bigger. Because Patricia Heaton wasn't just dealing with a reputation crisis. She was about to step into an even more complicated storm, one that involved the very show that made her a household name. And this time, walking away wouldn't be so easy. By the time Everybody Loves Raymond entered its later seasons, it had become one of the most powerful sitcoms on television. The show was pulling in millions of viewers every week, winning Emmys left and right and raking in hundreds of millions in ad revenue. On the surface, everything looked like a dream, but Patricia Heaton wasn't just caught in the middle of it. She became one of its key players. The trouble started with Brad Garrett. Known for his towering presence and deadpan delivery as Robert Barone, Garrett had been with the show since the very first episode. But while the show skyrocketed in success, his paycheck didn't. In 2003, it was revealed that Ray Romano, the show's star and co-creator, had renegotiated his deal with CBS, securing a jaw-dropping $1.8 million per episode. He was the highest-paid actor on television. Meanwhile, Garrett was earning just $160,000 per episode. That number didn't sit right for Patricia Heaton. What the public didn't see was that Heaton was quietly watching this unfold with rising concern. She had carried a major emotional load on the show. Her character Deborah wasn't just the nagging wife stereotype. She was the backbone of the family dynamic, and yet her salary was nowhere near Romano's, not even close to the millions being poured into the show's marketing. Heaton's objection changed everything. She wasn't just another cast member. She had credibility, influence, and a track record of reliability. She wasn't demanding Romano's salary. That was never the goal, but she wanted equity, fairness, and recognition for nearly a decade of dedication. The network finally gave in. Contracts were renegotiated. Pay was increased across the board. The cast returned, and the cameras rolled again. But something had changed. For most of her career, Heaton had been celebrated for being dependable, professional, and drama-free. Still, Heaton had no regrets. After years of pushing through pregnancies, hiding health battles, and protecting her privacy, she had finally drawn a line. She knew her worth, and she wasn't afraid to protect it, even if it meant losing out on short-term roles. The money dispute wasn't just about salary, it was about dignity. She didn't just want a paycheck, she wanted respect. For Heaton, the show's end was more than just the close of a chapter. It was the end of a safety net. And as she stepped away from the role that had defined her for nearly a decade, she knew the next phase wouldn't be simple. The path forward would be hers to carve. But Patricia Heaton had already proven one thing. When the pressure is on, she doesn't fold. She survives. And the next move would show just how far she was willing to go to stay in control of her own story. The final season of Everybody Loves Raymond was supposed to be a celebration, a victory lap after 9 years of laughs, Emmys, and top ratings. But for Patricia Heaton, it didn't feel like a win. It felt like the edge of a cliff. Throughout the show's run, Heaton had kept herself together through pregnancies, health struggles, behind-the-scenes tensions, and even a quiet legal scandal. She was professional, but on the last day of filming, something inside her snapped. It started during the final table read. The cast gathered around the scripts like they had hundreds of times before, but this time, the air felt heavier. Jokes landed, but nobody laughed as loud. The lines still worked, but everyone knew they were reading them for the last time. For Heaton, that realization didn't just sting, it overwhelmed her. She couldn't make it through the final scene without crying, and when the cast moved to the stage for the rehearsal taping, she broke down completely. It was so intense that she lost her voice, literally. Her throat closed up, her speech vanished, and she couldn't deliver her final lines. The audience was sent home. Taping had to be postponed. The woman who had carried the show with poise and sharp timing for nearly a decade now couldn't speak at all. To outsiders, it looked like a touching moment, the emotional farewell of a cast who had become family. But to those who knew Heaton well, it was something else. This wasn't just about saying goodbye to a show. It was about losing the one place she'd felt in control. For 9 seasons, Raymond gave her stability, an anchor. She knew her character. She knew her place. Now that safety net was gone. Heaton had spent years managing everything off camera. But the one thing she couldn't control was what came next. She was 47 years old. In Hollywood, that number carries weight, especially for women. The offers don't flood in. The leading roles don't keep calling. And no matter how beloved Deborah Barone had become, there was no guarantee Patricia Heaton would be welcomed into her next act. And it wasn't just age. The industry remembered everything. She had gone toe-to-toe with CBS over salary disputes. She'd backed Brad Garrett's protest. She'd become known as the actress who wouldn't just nod along. So that breakdown on the final day wasn't just emotion, it was fear. For so long, she had fought to keep her place. Now, the spotlight was turning elsewhere, and she wasn't sure anyone was still watching. After the final scene was taped, once her voice returned and the episode was wrapped, the cast had a small wrap party. Champagne flowed, speeches were made, and the room filled with bittersweet energy. But Heaton didn't stay long. According to one crew member, she left early, slipped out the back door while others toasted their next projects. Because unlike them, she didn't know what was next. The identity crisis hit hard. For nearly a decade, she had been Deborah Barone to the world, a character so familiar that fans treated her like family. But that kind of fame can trap you. Casting directors couldn't see the sitcom mom. Studios hesitated to offer anything too different. She was now a brand, but a narrow one. Heaton later said that the end of Raymond felt like falling off a cliff. No matter how much she prepared, the silence after the final episode was deafening. The phone didn't ring as much. The scripts that came in felt off. The ones she wanted never made it to her hands. And after years of being essential, she suddenly felt invisible. But here's the part that matters. Patricia Heaton didn't stay down. She made a decision. She wasn't going to let one show define her. She had built herself once, and she would do it again. Only this time, it would be on her terms. No more playing it safe. No more hiding. No more waiting to be cast. She'd create her own roles. The emotional breakdown on that last day wasn't the end. It was a reset, the kind of moment that strips everything away and forces you to decide who you really are when no one's watching. And Patricia Heaton was ready to step into that darkness, not quietly, but with her own voice, finally cleared and stronger than ever. Because for everything she had hidden, survived, or endured, what came next was hers to own. When the curtain closed on Everybody Loves Raymond, Patricia Heaton didn't just walk away with memories. She walked away with something much smaller, but far more personal. A leather-bound journal used as a prop in a handful of episodes. It was never meant to be hers. It wasn't glamorous or engraved. During breaks, when the cameras stopped rolling, Heaton would quietly write in it her thoughts, prayers, and lines that didn't make it to air. It became her emotional outlet, a place to keep herself grounded while the world expected perfection. That journal held 9 years of silent moments. But when the final episode wrapped and the lights dimmed on the Barone household, she took it with her. It was her way of preserving the truth behind the polished sitcom image. Because not everything stayed wrapped in laughter. Despite portraying one of television's most relatable moms, Heaton walked off that set feeling emotionally depleted and creatively isolated. She'd given everything to the role, and while the audience adored her, the industry response after the finale was chilling. Some even said she was too mature for leading roles now. It didn't matter that she had 2 Emmys, glowing reviews, and one of the most beloved characters in sitcom history. All they saw was her past. Hollywood is always chasing the next big thing, and once Raymond ended, Heaton realized she was being quietly boxed out of the very system she had spent years helping to succeed. It was subtle. A woman who'd carried a network for almost a decade now found herself on the outside, watching roles go to younger, less experienced actresses, while her phone stayed silent. But what hit even harder than the silence from studios was the silence from the people she thought were family. The Raymond cast had always played a close-knit unit, but when filming ended, the group began to drift fast. Brad Garrett and Heaton had once shared sharp comedic timing and deep mutual respect, but their friendship cooled after the salary dispute. They had taken the same side in negotiations, but the aftermath left lingering tension. The warmth they once shared behind the scenes was gone. They never had a public falling out. They didn't need one. Sometimes the absence speaks loudest. Peter Boyle passed away in 2006. Doris Roberts followed in 2016. With each loss, the illusion of the Barone family faded a little more, and with it, so did Heaton's connection to the role that defined her. The show might have lived on in reruns, but the bonds didn't. Even the annual reunions and interviews felt more like obligations than heartfelt reunions. That was the cost no one talked about, and Heaton was left to carry not just the memories, but the emotional weight of what she'd given and what she never really got back. In her journal, she had written about days spent filming while battling migraines, about hiding pregnancies and crying in silence between takes. Those weren't moments the audience ever saw. Those weren't written into scripts. but they were real, and they stayed with her. She had fought for her co-stars, fought for equal pay, and in return, she'd expected loyalty, or at least acknowledgement. No one asked how she was adjusting. No one noticed how quiet she had become. Everyone was chasing the next big role, while she was still trying to catch her breath. Still, she didn't dwell in bitterness. That wasn't Heaton's way. She took her journal, now filled with a decade's worth of pain, growth, and resilience. If the industry wouldn't open its doors, she'd build her own. She didn't need to be Deborah Barone anymore. She didn't need the old cast. She didn't even need the network that once called her a cornerstone, but she did need truth. And for the first time, she stopped hiding behind scripts and perfect takes. The woman who had once been told to smile, but she did need truth. And for the first time, she stopped hiding behind scripts and perfect takes. The woman who had once been told to smile through pregnancy, illness, and scandal was now refusing to stay silent. Because in the end, Patricia Heaton left Everybody Loves Raymond with something far more powerful than fame. Proof that she had endured, that she had given more than anyone ever knew, and that even if the industry forgot her worth, she never would. And now, with everything stripped away, Patricia Heaton may have walked off the set of Everybody Loves Raymond feeling uncertain, exhausted, and emotionally worn out. But what she did next proved that she wasn't just a sitcom star. She was a survivor in one of the most unforgiving industries in the world. While some actors struggle to find a second act after such a defining role, Heaton carved out an entirely new one, and she didn't wait around for the industry to offer it to her. In 2009, just a few years after Raymond ended, she returned to primetime as Frankie Heck in The Middle. This time, she wasn't the perfect sitcom wife with well-lit kitchen scenes and designer sweaters. Frankie was messy, overwhelmed, broke, and deeply human. It was everything Heaton had been told not to do, and it worked. Audiences embraced her all over again. The Middle was never flashy, but it was consistent and relatable in a way that only someone with Heaton's lived experience could deliver. She didn't need to be glamorous or center stage to be powerful. She needed to be truthful. And in playing Frankie, she tapped into the part of herself that Hollywood had once tried to polish out of existence. 9 seasons later, The Middle ended with dignity. It wasn't a smash hit like Raymond, but it solidified something even more meaningful. Heaton could break the mold. She could survive one career-defining role and still build something new, and very few actresses can do that. But Heaton didn't stop there. She moved behind the camera. She took on producing roles. While others stayed quiet to keep their place at the table, Heaton had played by the rules, paid her dues, and held back when it mattered most. Now, she was done playing small. She openly shared her decision to give up alcohol and live clean, something she'd quietly started during Raymond, but never made public until later. She talked about the pressure to look young and how she used cosmetic procedures. But what made her words resonate wasn't the confession, it was the context. Over time, her honesty became part of her brand. No more pretending, no more playing perfect. She showed other women in Hollywood that reinvention wasn't just possible, it was necessary. That you didn't need to apologize for aging or pushing back, that you could love your past and still move forward. She never let that part of her story be erased. When fans look back on Everybody Loves Raymond, they see a comforting, nostalgic family sitcom. But behind every laugh track and kitchen argument was a woman battling to stay afloat. A woman who fought quietly when things were unfair, who gave her all to a show that didn't always give back, who held together an image the world adored, even when she felt like she was falling apart behind it. Her legacy isn't just Deborah Barone or Frankie Heck. It's the quiet resistance, the refusal to be flattened by the very spotlight that made her famous. Patricia Heaton's story isn't just about sitcom fame. It's about what it takes to endure when the cameras shut off. She didn't just play a strong woman on screen, she became one behind the scenes. She turned every hidden struggle into quiet power. So the next time you watch Everybody Loves Raymond, remember, the funniest lines weren't the hardest part. And somehow, Patricia Heaton didn't just survive it, she mastered it. Why did Patricia Heaton completely lose her voice on the final day of filming? And what does that moment say about everything she endured off camera? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for further updates and click the next video on screen for another interesting story.